Strings are one of the most fundamental data types in the Python programming language. As a result, knowing how to manipulate these extremely important data types is going to only benefit you in your coding career. This is because not only are strings used in the communication between software systems, but also because they are very versatile when it comes to parsing information from documents, for example. In this video, we're going to take a look at 10 Python string methods that are extremely useful in manipulating strings. They'll range from very common ones, if you know anything about the Python programming language itself, to more esoteric ones that not everyone tends to know about, but can be extremely useful. And those ones in particular will save you a lot of headaches when it comes to manipulating Python strings. So let's jump right into it. The first Python string method that's going to be extremely useful to any Python programmer is the .lower method. As the name implies, and as you could probably guess, this string method converts all of the characters that are contained within a string into lowercase. Now, while it might not seem obvious at first, under the hood of our machine, this can actually be very useful when we're testing for the equality between two sets of strings. This is due to the fact that capitalized letters and lowercase letters are actually encoded slightly differently under the hood of our machine, thanks to the concept of ASCII characters. Now, ASCII is a low-level definition for how characters and numbers and symbols are encoded underneath the hood of our machine. As such, the two strings you see on your screen right now are actually encoded slightly differently thanks to the capital H and the capital W in the one string and the lowercase h and the lowercase w in the other hello world string. Now, to use the .lower method and to realistically use pretty much every single string method, we go ahead and just simply apply it either to the end of the string itself or to the end of the variable that is responsible for storing our string. Now, after we go ahead and run our program after calling this .lower method, you should see that the hello world string with the capital H and the capital W are now lowercase capital H and capital W, thus making these two strings equivalent. Now, string method number 2 is actually the counterpart to the .lower method, and if you could probably guess, it is going to be the .upper method. Similar to how the .lower method makes all of the characters lowercase, the .upper method performs the reverse type of logic and actually makes all the characters uppercase. Again, thanks to the way ASCII characters are encoded underneath the hood of our machine, this could be extremely useful if we're always comparing strings of uppercase, or at least to create a baseline of all upper or all lower when doing string comparisons. Now, the third Python string method that we're going to talk about is one that is actually slightly outdated, but deserves to be mentioned here due to an evolution that was made in Python 3.6 or later, and this is going to be the .format string method. You see, the .format method allows you to place variables within your string, making string interpolation more dynamic for your program. For example, let's say you were writing some sort of script that welcomed a user onto your website and takes in the user's first name as a variable. Well, obviously you couldn't go in and write a billion different lines of code for all of your a billion different users. You could simply declare one variable, such as a first name variable, and assign it to the first name of the user on your website, and simply use the .format method to place that variable within your string by using the set of open and closed curly braces and passing all desired variables in sequential order to those sets of curly braces as arguments to the .format method. Now, as I mentioned a few moments ago, this is actually sort of not necessarily a deprecated way of performing string interpolation, but rather there is a much better and much more efficient way to perform string interpolation, and that introduces us to the concept of f-strings. Essentially, f-strings allow you to perform the exact same functionality that the .format method does. However, instead of applying this method to the end of a string, you simply lead the string that you are trying to create with the letter F, and then for every set of open and closed curly braces within your string, you can go ahead and actually apply this variable directly. And if you go ahead and run your script, you will actually notice that it is the same end results. The fourth method that is often desirable in some instance to use is going to be the .index method. Now, the .index method, as the name implies, actually returns to us the index of the character that is passed as an argument, and more specifically, the first time this character appears in a string. For example, if I had the string hello world and I applied the .index method to the end of this hello world variable, I would get in response as a result of this method, the number 1. This is because the letter E is in the first index slot. Recall, Python is a 0 index language, hence we get the number 1 back when calling this string method. Notice also if I pass the letter L to this dot index method, I will actually receive the number 2, even though there are 3 L's in total. It's going to return to me the first time this L occurred, which is in the 0, 1 second index space. Reason why this is useful is because similar to how we can index a list in the Python programming language, we can actually also index strings. So for example, if I were to go ahead and provide the open and closed set of square brackets to this hello world variable, and let's go ahead and pass in what the index is of the letter E. If I were to go ahead and pass in the number 1, I would get returned to me the E character, which again, this concept of indexing strings can also be super helpful depending upon a problem that you might face in the future. Now for this 5th string method and some of the subsequent ones that follow, not only can we apply methods to manipulate a string, but we can also apply methods to return to us Boolean values to help assess some characteristics about strings that we might find useful. For example, let's say we had a string and I wanted to know, does the string contain only alphabetic characters, right? There might be some instance where I do not want any numeric characters present in my string. Well, to assess whether or not a string contains numeric characters, I can go ahead and apply the .isAlpha method. Now, with this being a Boolean type of method, only 2 values can be returned. However, if even a single number is present within this string, you'll notice on your screen here in this example, it actually returns false. However, for strings that only contain alphabetic characters, it will return true. All right, now that was string method number 5, and we're about halfway done through this video and covering string methods. But if you aren't ready to be done just yet and would like to continue, I actually have developed a course called Software Engineering in Python that I'll link down in the description below, where me, a self-taught programmer who took 0 coding courses in college, help you guys better understand the Python programming language and teach you guys either from square one, if you've never learned how to code in Python before, how to develop a skill set to the point where you're actually proficient in the language, on top of additional modules focusing on areas like backend engineering, data science, data structures, and algorithms. That module will actually be dropping in sometime in October. So if you guys are interested, I encourage you, check it out. Let me know what you think. I hope you guys really enjoy it. But now on to Python string method number 6. Now for the 6th string method, similar to the .isAlpha method, we actually have another one called .isAlNum. Now this .isAlNum method actually stands for .isAlphabetic numeric, and essentially what this is checking for is, are only numeric and alphabetic characters contained within this string. Now, while that might seem like a stupid thing to check, recall we also have punctuations and other types of characters or symbols that we can pass along to strings. Now this harkens back to the concept of ASCII characters and how things are encoded underneath the hood of our machine. And so as a result, if we are interested in not having any sort of commas or periods or quotation marks within strings, we can go ahead and assess their existence within those strings by using the .isAlNum method. So for example, in the string you guys see on your screen now, if we apply the .isAlNum method to it, you guys will notice that we will indeed get true returned to us. However, if we went ahead and supplied some plus symbols, some commas, even some asterisks within the string, and we applied the .isAlNum method to that one, we would get a value of false being returned. Now finally, with the .isAlpha method, we were sort of only focused on alphabetic, then .isAlNum, we are now focused on alphabetic and numeric characters. There's actually a final one of these types of method called .isAscII, and you guessed it, this method assesses whether or not the characters within the string you have typed out contain ASCII level characters. Now characters that are encoded within the sort of ASCII realm are finite, and so if there's anything that is sort of peculiar or out of the ordinary within a string that you have provided, you can go ahead and assess that quality with the .isAscII character. And on the example of your screen right now, you can see how we provided a symbol, or rather a character that is not ASCII related, and so as a result we return false instead of true. Now just like we had a .isAlpha character, we actually also have .isNumeric as well as .isDigit, and while both of these check for the existence of only numeric characters within a string, we need to actually sort of parse this out a little bit. For example, if we go ahead and pass Roman numerals within our string and apply the .is numeric string method, we actually will get the value of true returned. However, because Roman numerals are represented with Latin characters, if we were to apply the .is digit method to this string, we would actually get the value of false being returned. Now we're almost done, but this ninth method that we are going to talk about when it comes to Python string manipulation is extremely important. The string .join method is actually extremely useful for putting together elements of a list, for example, into a single string. Now the .join method is actually a bit tricky to get the hang of, but for the context of this video, we'll go ahead and start off with the sort of most simple use case. Let's say you had a list full of letters that you wanted to combine into a single word. Well, if you had a single character for every element of that list, you could go ahead and assign to a variable to hold this string the open and closed set of quotations representing a space, or rather the lack of a space, and then apply the .join method and then pass the list containing your characters as an argument into the .join method. And so how you would sort of interpret this, and if you go ahead and run your script, you'll see this on your screen now, we actually were able to create a single word from all of those individual characters because we basically said, hey Python, please join all of these characters together, but don't separate them. However, let's go ahead and actually provide a space out front between the open and closed set of quotation marks. Well, you'll notice that we kind of get the same word that's spelled out. However, there's actually a space between each individual character, and sort of to highlight and exaggerate this point, let's go ahead and pass the $sign as a type of argument in between the open and closed set of quotation marks leading the .join method. And you'll notice that indeed between every single letter within our string, we get the $sign appearing. Now, last but absolutely not least is going to be one of the most important Python string methods, and that is going to be the .split method. Let's say we had a single string with multiple words separated by a comma. Well, if we were to apply the .split method to this string and pass a comma within a set of open and closed quotation marks as an argument to the .split method, when we would go ahead and print out this manipulated variable, you'll notice that we actually have extracted every single word within this string into a Python list. Now, this is very key. Let's say if I were to go ahead and change the commas in the string above to a $sign, for example, and I apply the .split method, well, you'll notice that actually we don't get the desired response if we were desiring to split every single character on the $sign. Thus, as a result, if you're going to split a string on a certain character, you're going to have to pass it to the .split method. And so there you have it, 10 extremely useful Python string methods that any software engineer should in fact know. Now, again, as I reiterate in many of my videos on the channel, you guys, and I encourage you to go ahead and check them out, the only way to truly get better at your programming skill set is to simply program. If you're interested in continuing on in your Python coding journey, I'd encourage you to check out the course that I linked down in the description below of this video. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. See you there.